Friends, 2 weeks ago on Easter Sunday, I spoke of angels and how they inspire all, what it must be like to be greeted with an angel, and how angels generally begin their sentences with "fear not." They must be terrifying, I thought. We talked about this a little bit. And then one of you, beautiful that you are, wrote me a nice email to tell me how sorry you were that I had not seen an angel for myself yet, that you had on many occasions, and that you take this as a sign of perhaps your own creativity or maybe a few marbles that aren't quite fastened down, that angels tend to visit only those who have a little bit more flexibility of mind. Nevertheless, you assured me that next time you saw one, you would give them my address and send them my way. So thank you to all of you. I will report back once we have seen these angels for ourselves. The risen Jesus comes and stands among his disciples and his friends after he was dead, after he was in a tomb, long gone, and he begins, "Peace be with you." This is a little bit like "Fear not." It's bizarre. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It doesn't answer the question of who are you, why are you here, and why do you look so much like Jesus who was dead? I'm really confused. But nonetheless, it's "Peace be with you." And it's the peace of Christ that we offer to each other in the chat window every week these days, or when we can, and we will again one day, move around the sanctuary offering hugs or handshakes or words of greeting and love. Peace be with you. This is real. Peace is real. And it's not just the peace that he talks about here. In the lesson that we just heard, Willem read, the book of Acts and then the book of Luke, read backwards. We know that they are the same author, Luke and then Acts, a continuous missive. We read them in reverse order today because I wanted to pick up on the theme of rejection that is in the Acts letter. There are any number of things that we may need to reject about our faith. And this may seem counterintuitive because clearly we should have more faith, not less. We need to trust more, not reject what we don't understand. We need to know that sometimes we just don't know everything, and that that's faith. But sometimes we know enough to know that this doesn't work out for me, and it may be faith, but it's not anything that feels good or healthy or godly to me. We need to trust. And I think there are times when we may need to reject certain parts, certain things, certain ways of growing up. If Jesus himself was rejected, and he tells us he was, then perhaps the church that bears his name can do some rejecting along the way as well. Rejection, after all, is a very human thing. It's something I'm sure we all know, and we'll get to that. It's something we know in our country, and we're going to talk about that. It's something Jesus knew. There may be any number of things in church, in the world, in our interpersonal relationships, in our families, any number of things that we have previously taken on faith, but that also, perhaps, at least invite some skepticism, invite something that may get to a rejection of an idea that isn't quite right anymore. I don't know. Thinking this week as I was writing and thinking about rejection and how rejection can be an act of faith for all of us, gun control comes to my mind. Not the owning of guns for sport or family heirlooms or for hunting for food, but the weapons of war available to anyone at a Walmart that requires no oversight, that are available to people who are not well and should not be able to have access to these weapons. I'm ready to reject guns, but I don't know if that will actually do the work of resurrecting. If only the bad guys have the guns, the saying says, the bad guys win. I don't know that I buy that logic entirely. I understand it. There's got to be a better way. I'm ready to reject guns. And I don't know if this will do the work of resurrecting. It certainly won't bring Dewante Wright back to life, nor Trayvon Martin back to life, nor any of the hardworking Americans at a FedEx plant or a local school. I can't even name all the local schools anymore. For frankly, I don't even know how many other places. I don't know how we're going to solve our nation's obsession with guns. But I do know we need God's help. And I do know that there is something here in the rejecting of what humans have done and the bed we have made for ourselves, and the resurrection that God promises to do for us in God's way. Resurrection is, of course, also a very personal thing. We've all, at one time or another, been rejected. A crush, or a friend, or we didn't get the job that we wanted. I venture to say all of us have also done some rejecting as well, and perhaps this has caused harm or grief or sadness. It's been something that has been had to work through. Rejection isn't just a one-time thing, it's a very active process. We move through stages. Rejection to acceptance to resurrection. So what comes on the other side of the grief and the sadness if we allow rejection to be part of the faith of this Easter season? This is resurrection season. This is the third Sunday of Easter, and today we are going to talk specifically about how rejection has a relationship to resurrection as an act of faith. The difference in a faith that blindly accepts and a faith that questions. Good Reformed Protestants that we all are, this is a thinking sort of faith, a faith that may get us through not just the resurrection daffodils we all love to talk about, but the harder resurrections of things that may actually need to die. Obsessions with gun control, systemic racism, any racism, homelessness, food insecurity. I could go on. There are any number of things that we are all acutely aware of right now, over a year into this pandemic way of living, which has been a rejection and comes with the promise of resurrection as well. There are things that we all are beginning to sense that may need to be rejected. Going to an office 5 days a week, going to school 5 days a week, commuting, traveling, who knows? Any number of things. And I know so many of you and so many writers. Every day we open the newspaper and there's another story about how the pandemic is changing our lives, and we have no idea what it actually means yet. There's rejection. And on the other side, there is resurrection. And so today, for the rest of our sermon time, for a few minutes, we're going to try something a little different. If you've ever stepped foot into my morning prayer group or been with Adult Ed with Bridget or studied with Pastor Sam, you know that we've grown rather fond of group exegesis, which means we all bring it together to read out from the text what it is that we are learning and doing together. This is rejecting the idea that there is only one interpreter of Scripture. This is rejecting the idea that there is a fundamentalism in Scripture that cannot be interpreted more broadly. This is a rejection of patriarchy and of only those with power interpreting the Scriptures. And this is a resurrection that comes with a reformation to get us here today. So in this season, this today, what I would like to ask, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. The chat window's open. You can also unmute yourself. I'm going to ask you 3 questions to consider. And you don't have to answer them aloud. We'll spend some time in silence thinking about them. These are the questions. Is there something from your faith? Faith in God, faith in your family, faith in community, faith in society. Is there something in your faith of years past that you have now rejected for your present? And that has no place in your future? Have an idea? Question 2. What did you gain or lose in this? Slightly deeper question. Question 3. Where do you need God to make resurrection possible? Because you know you've done all that you can, and it's still not there. Question 1. Is there something from your faith that you have had to reject from your past in order to live this day and wake tomorrow? 2. What did you gain or lose in this? 3. Where do you need God to make resurrection possible? If you want to share, you can share in the chat window. You can unmute yourself and say a word. You don't have to. You can reject this idea of a sermon discussion altogether, and there can be resurrection on the other side of this. These are beautiful thoughts in the chat window, and I imagine they'll keep coming. I think they're right. I think there's much rejection that is good and healthy, and that we are here together, looking for resurrection together. And this, friends, this is resurrection season. And it began with a rejection of the chief cornerstone. That's what we heard in the Gospel of Luke and in the book of Acts. That rejection of the chief cornerstone begins it all. And then it goes on to include a last meal and the betrayal of one friend and the denial by another, rejection. The precursor to the resurrection season includes the rejection on the cross, the separation between the world that was and the world that will come, and resurrection season is the trumpets of Easter Sunday, the smiles, the thoughts of this Sunday, and of every day between this place and the next. Hold fast to the things that you have rejected. Think firmly of what they are. Name them and know them. Maybe you've seen an angel and know what an angel looks like. Maybe you know how to hold fast to things that can't be held on to. Reject the idea, know the idea, stay present to the present, and trust that God works the series of resurrections. That trust in God's way that there is a distinction and a process. And the work of resurrection doesn't just come out of nowhere. It comes from places where death has visited, where rejection has shown its head, and where God, as God alone can do, promises never to leave us. There is nothing in all of creation, neither heights nor depths, that can separate us from the love of God. Resurrection season, Easter season. God has shattered the tombs of rejection, all that holds us back, and all that we are ready to reject too, including death. And God opens us to a new path for life. How will you begin to walk this day? Where does this path take you? Where is resurrection leading that you don't even know? Will you have your eyes open? Will you lean on each other? Will we all do this together? That's the work of the church, the work of resurrection. People, get ready. There's resurrection afoot.